Okay, we're ready to go. Ms. Messina, can you please start us off with the roll call?
Good morning, commissioners. District 1. District 2. District 3, absent. District 4.
Here.
District 5. District 6. Here. District 7. Vacant. District 8. I'm here. District 9. District 10.
Here, I wish I was there.
11.
We wish you were here too.
Thank you. Sorry to miss.
11 is absent today.
Okay. District 12. District 13. Present. District 14. And place 15.
I'm here in someplace much cooler, so I don't wish I was there.
Well, we miss you also. Thank you very much. Good morning, commissioners. Today is Thursday, August 3rd. It is exactly 9:05 a.m. Welcome to the Dallas Plan Commission briefing. Commissioners, before we get started, since Vice Chair Rubin is not in the room, we have to have a vice chair. So Commissioner Stanton graciously accepted the service vice chair today. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. Thank you, Commissioner Crawford. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And with that, we're going to jump right into the docket. And Ms. Blue, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. Thank you, Dr. Benz. I said, Ms. Blue, good morning.
Alright, this is case M 223-010. It's a request for a minor amendment to the existing development plan. It's located in Plan Development District number 1088. The area request is 13.71 acres and it's in Council District 7. The property is located west side of Buckner Boulevard, north of John West Road. And so the applicant is requesting the following things to be amended on the development plan. Relocation of building and dumpsters out of the 15-foot rear yard setback to show the 6-foot sidewalk, a 5-foot buffer along Buckner. They're gonna add a pump house. They're increasing the fire lane in a few areas to 26 feet to meet code. They're gonna divide one of the buildings into two. I'll show you that later. And then they're showing the required 6-foot walking trail correctly. I believe when they went to permit, they only had 24 and they needed 2,600 linear feet. And then they're gonna reconfigure some of the parking bays and also the parking garages. Here is an area view and surrounding zoning districts. North, we have an MF2. Along the west boundary, we have an R75, and then south, we have a TH3, an MF2, and then over to the east south, we have a LO3. Here is their existing development plan. Here's the existing development plan in large. Here's some areas of request that I have circled here. We'll go over on the proposed. This is the proposed development plan. And here's the enlarged. You see this first building here, they actually had a L shape that was connected. They're gonna divide it into two buildings now. This parking bay was along the north boundary. They're moving it, actually a parking garage, private parking garage. They're gonna move it. These buildings were in the 15-foot setback. They're moving them up, and then they're gonna add this pump house here. And also they had a parking garage located here, a private one that they're removing for this. And then also the walking trail is hatched, so it's showing kind of dark, but they are showing the walking trail. Instead of going 2,600 linear feet, they actually increased it a little and doing 2,800. Staff recommendation approval, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Questions, Commissioner Young?
What is the pump house for? Is that connection with pool or is that fire protection or? I'll ask the applicant.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stanton, please.
Yes, where did you say, okay, when they took away the L-shaped building and made it two,
Yes.
what happened to I didn't quite understand what you're saying, that they're doing now a parking garage?
Oh, private parking garage. So, the individual parking, garages, so the individual parking garages. So the individual parking garage, they had it here on the north boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're just aligning it here with this one that they already had existing to sit back and back. So these would be parking garages for rent. So like say if you have an apartment building and you want instead of parking space, you can actually have a individual private parking garage.
I got you.
Yes, ma'am. So it's an enclosed structure.
And then they've done the same thing down here. is that
Yes,
right?
ma'am. So those were existing.
I know.
They just removed this one right
Okay.
here.
Okay.
Any other questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Hess, please. Good morning.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. On the courthouse question, is that located out of the setback? My apologies, I can't tell.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioners? Okay, we'll go to case number 2 and let the record reflect that Commissioner Kingston and Upton joined us today at 9:10 a.m. Good morning. Well,
Good morning, Commissioners. First case I have for you today is C212319. The request is an amendment to specific use permit number 398 for the sale of alcoholic beverages in conjunction with the general merchandise for food store, 3,500 square feet or less. The property is in Subdistrict 2 within Land Development District number 555, the CF Pond Special Purpose District 3 with a D1 liquor control overlay. Located at the northwest corner of CF Pond Freeway in South St. Augustine Drive, 0.29 acres. Location map showing the property in the city limits. Aerial map with the area of the west outlined in blue. Zoning map with surrounding zoning districts and land uses. To the north zone, the NSA district is undeveloped land. There's other undeveloped land to the northwest zone, MF2A. To the east is another fueling station with the general merchandise use, and then to the south across the freeway, also another fueling station and a general merchandise use as well as a restaurant. The property is currently zoned Subdistrict 2 within PD 535 with a G1 overlay. It's currently developed with a motor vehicle fueling station with a general merchandise or food store, 3,500 square feet or less. With that existing SUP for alcohol sales. This SUP was approved on August 12th, 2020 for a 2-year period, so it expired on August 12th, 2022. And they filed for renewal instead of the gun on August 11th last year. With this request, they're asking for renewal of the existing SUP for another 3-year period to continue the sale of alcoholic beverages in the property. Other than the time limit, they do not propose any changes to the existing conditions or site plan of SUP 2390. Site photos, this is on the site looking northwest, and we're just going to go in a clockwise fashion and looking at the site. Some views of that site. Here. And then surrounding uses, this is on south of St. Augustine Drive, looking east. And then looking due east at the other fueling station on the other side of the street. And then views to the south, you can see some other retail uses across the freeway. This is the existing site plan currently on file for the SUP. There are no changes proposed to this site plan. And with that, staff's recommendation is approval for a 3-year period subject to revised conditions, and I'm available for any questions.
Sir, questions, Commissioner? Commissioner Young?
Yes, you're saying in your report that the police department has determined that the request site meets standards in chapter 12B. Do they actually have the 12B certificate?
Yes, they do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Parkinson.
Even though the board calls all down in the major accident, that's got to be the most impressive. We have to ignore that.
Yeah, not a lot, not a lot.
Are you aware? I saw it.
Yes. Mr. Locke, are you aware that dozens and dozens of doing this that I've never seen crime stats? And in fact, what the pattern is that 175 that usually is hot. And the further you get away from those, usually the crime stats go down. This is an anomaly.
Yeah.
Is that right? In your experience, sorry?
Sure.
A very nice anomaly. Any questions on that, commissioners? Okay, we'll keep going. Case number 3 and 4, cases 3 and 4 will both be held under advisement on August 17th. So they'll come off consent and we will brief them then. So that takes us to case number 5, back to D7. Ms. Sparta, good morning.
So this case is 2223 Beach 2. This is an application for an MF to a multi-family subdistrict on properties in the CC Community Commercial Subdistrict within Planned Development District number 595. It's at the South Dallas Far Special Purpose District. It's located on the southeast side of Birmingham Avenue between J.P. Jackson Senior Boulevard and Robert B. Cullen Boulevard. It's approximately 0.47 acres. As I mentioned, this is in the South Area Park area. This is an area of the location of the request. And then a zoning map. So there is within the CC Community Commercial District, and then surrounding areas, there's single family to the west, undeveloped family also to the west, and there is a multifamily on the south of the location, and then right adjacent to the east is undeveloped, and then there's single family and multifamily across the Dallas Street. And the area request is currently undeveloped in the zone, CC Community Commercial District with the PD number 595. The applicant is supposed to develop a property with a multifamily development. The proposed use is not permitted under the CC subdistrict. Thus, the applicant is requesting an MF2A use on its district to allow the use by right. Previously, there was a structure on site in Sissy Church, but it was demolished in 2017. And these are the site codes of the area request. So this is on the side, looking to the southeast, to the south, again, to the southeast, south, southwest. And then surrounding uses, as I mentioned, there is multifamily across the street of J.B. Jackson Junior Boulevard. And then to the southwest, there's also single family and developed areas, and then also single family to the west, to the northeast, to the northwest. And then to the north, there is a public private school. And then to the northeast, again, that's the part of the school. To the east, so right adjacent to it, it is undeveloped land. And these are the law standards, we proposed with an MF2, fronts 15 for the side rear setbacks, the height, be a minimum of 36 feet maximum. And then lot coverage at 60% residential, 50% non-residential, there's proximity disclosed. And then, the applicant request, although the applicant has not indicated intent to provide affordable units as part of the development, and MF2 in the sub-district would be entitled to develop bonuses if affordable units are provided. And then there is area plans in this area. The site is located in the community commercial area corridor, which is characterized by a mix of office, retail, and public service. This is serving both nearby residential areas as well as a broader community within the South Dallas Fair Park economic development. Although the plan recommends a commercial zone for the subject side, the proposed MF2 multifamily is consistent with the zoning pattern in the surrounding area. And then it's also within the Dallas Todd Martin Luther King Junior Station area. The site is within the neighborhood of the Fair Park, south of the MLK Fire Station that proposed a large footprint retail uses single and multifamily housing. Although the plan recommends single family use for the site, the surrounding area currently consists of primarily multifamily residential. The proposed lands will create additional housing options within the area. And it's also within the 360 plan. The 360 plan emphasizes ample opportunity for continued investment in redevelopment in areas of South Dallas, Fair Park that have experienced years of neglect or revitalization efforts in the emerging vacant parts of the area. The proposed land will revitalize the surrounding community with additional housing options. And then staff recommends approval.
Thank you very much. Questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Rubin, please.
Are you aware of whether the applicant intends to offer deed restrictions?
Yes, so as of this week, I believe it was Tuesday, the applicant announced they are proposing to do deed restrictions. One of them being the maximum number of individual units that may be constructed on the property is 15 units.
Okay, any others besides the maximum number of dwelling units?
They also propose the air conditioning living space and the new construction of the property to be a minimum of 1,200 square feet.
Okay, and I guess this is Mr. Moore in the room? It's hard for me to see who's in there.
Yes, I'm here, Vice Chair Rubin.
Okay, great. And can you speak to, from legal's perspective, when and whether proposing minimum square footage requirements through deed restrictions, works, and when it becomes problematic, or your thoughts?
Certainly. The minimum structure size is a tool that I've been reluctant to use under the idea that it could create a slippery slope where that 1,200 square foot minimum in this case becomes 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, and over time it becomes such a large minimum that it borders on housing discrimination by requiring such a large structure.
Okay, but doing 1,200 here does not trigger those concerns. It's just a tool that we may not want to use.
Yeah, I don't think
Extremely
that it
open.
crosses that line here, but it's the slippery slope.
Okay. Understood. Great. Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioners? Okay, we'll keep going. Case number 6. Ms. Carson.
This next case is Z223-190. This represents an application for a TH3, a township subdistrict with restrictions volunteered by the applicant on property zoned in R5A single family subdistrict within planned development district number 505. It's the South Dallas Fairport Special Purpose District. It is located on the west corner of Hancock Street and Washington Street. It's approximately 360 acres. So the zoning map, surrounding zones and uses around the area requested are single family residential, and then on the south, there is a church. And the area request is currently undeveloped and is zoned R5 single family subdistrict within PD 595. The parcel is a corner lot and it has frontage on Hancock Street and Washington Street. The applicant proposes to develop a property with a duplex development. To accomplish this, they request a TH3 townhouse district. This district will allow single family and duplex residential uses. The applicant has also volunteered deed restrictions that would, 1, limit the property to a maximum of 2 dwelling units, 2, require 1 dwelling unit to face Hancock Street and 1 dwelling unit to face Washington Street, 3, limit maximum height of 30 feet, and 4, a minimum 20-foot front yard setback on Hancock Street. These are site photos of the site. So on Hancock looking northwest, and then surrounding uses to the west, to the northwest, to the north, to the northeast, and then to the east, and then looking southeast, and then south, and then on Hancock looking southwest. And as I mentioned, there is a church nearby. The development standards, so they're proposing, it's actually DA is TH3. So the actual front is actually 0 feet. And as mentioned, they are proposing, so if a block is divided by 2 or more, so district the front yard for the entire block is comply with the requirement of the district with the greatest front yard requirement, therefore because there are 5 lots around, so they will comply with the 20-foot front yard. Then applicant, as I mentioned, has volunteered restrictions that will require a 20-foot front yard setback on Hancock Street. And then they have also volunteered restrictions that restrict the power to a maximum of 2 dwelling units. And also, they have also limited the maximum height to 30 feet. And then it's also within the South Dallas Fairport Economic Development, sites within single family residential area, the concept fund is an opportunity for this sites. Then also, there are within the Dallas Hatchery Station area, although the plan recommends single family use for the site, the proposed signage will create additional housing options within the area. And then staff is recommending approval subject to deed restrictions volunteered by the applicant.
Any questions, Mr. Young?
Does the TH3 district allow duplex?
Yes.
That's something particular to the South Dallas PD?
The TH3 is allowed.
What? I couldn't understand.
Statewide basis.
Maybe the. Did your question get answered, Commissioner Young?
No.
No. I have the same one. I have the same question.
I have a question as well.
Are we waiting for an answer or what?
Uh-huh.
Yes, yeah, we are. Yeah, we are.
Who's this one?
Some more.
Differences on the TH3.
Well, I've got the zoning standard sheet about this, and it shows only single families.
No, I have like a review of it open and it shows residential use, duplex, retirement houses, handicap dwelling unit, and single family.
In TH3.
In all the TH.
What's the question?
It's duplex use.
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay, my might want to provide a copy that you give out of the front desk. Guess that gives the remainder of my questions. So this could be developed without requiring replat.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So any concerns about whether this would be eligible for replat under 8.503 or moved to the president?
I mean, we're talking mainly about Article 4 today.
I'm sorry?
We're mainly talking about Article 4 today, we're not talking about the subdivision.
Well, here's my concern, here's my question for Mr. Moore. In the past, when we have rezoned property that pretty much necessitates a replat, argument has been made in the plat stage that the council has already decided on the zoning, we have to approve a plat and approve it in zone. So it seems to me we ought to have to consider 8.503 at the zoning stage, or at the planning stage. Can't say it's off limits at the zoning stage and then say late planning stage.
I think that it's correct that if council wants to rezone this to allow for smaller lots and someone wants to come in and replat, they'd be able to, and they meet the minimum lot, they would be able to replat. And at that point, I don't think that 8.503 would apply because council, through its policy directive, has decided that upzoning would be appropriate.
Well, how does that differ from a situation where 10 years ago, the council zoned a parcel, R75, and now a 15,000 square foot lot is being proposed to be divided in two, and it doesn't meet the pattern?
I think that's more squarely in the 8.503 bucket.
And this was 10 years ago instead of last week?
No, because it would be, I guess the distinction in my mind would be the townhouse and the residential district. That because council is moving to, if this were to be approved, council would be moving to a townhouse district rather than a residential district.
Single family.
Sorry, the R75A, the typical,
I don't want to bog us down, Mr. Chair. I've still got a lot of questions about that, but I think if the property can be developed without replatting, then for the moment it's been.
Right, Commissioner Houseright. You're muted, Commissioner.
I'm so sorry. On the deed restrictions, they addressed the setbacks and they addressed the height. Is there any concern about not addressing the lot coverage?
Question?
Not that concerned about the lot coverage.
60%.
Do I need to restate the question?
It might be helpful, please, Commissioner Houseright.
Okay. The deed restrictions do not address the higher lot coverage in the applicant's proposal. Is the staff have any concern about that?
I can take that one. Yeah, you are correct, Commissioner Houseright. There is not a deed restriction being volunteered by the applicant to reduce the allowed lot coverage from 60% to 45%, which would make it in line with the adjacent lots. However, the applicant could still volunteer that additional condition at the podium this afternoon. If we all felt that was warranted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Farman.
It's not considered to be spot zoning, which we generally try to avoid. I'm especially concerned based on the answer we just got from legal saying that if this case got approved, this one lot change for transition to TH got approved by council, that would be sending a signal that this whole area is transitioning to townhouses. But this recommendation is made to deal with the lot-based continuity problem, but I think there are many more implications here, so how does this square with our general policy not to do spot zoning?
Well, as you know, Commissioner, spot zoning is a legal term of art that has a specific definition, and only a court can determine whether or not something is spot zoning. So I would be reluctant to use that specific legal characterization.
We also have the duplex, I mean, everything from single family to multi-family is residential. So the question is not if we're adding new uses, the question is we're adding more units. So the question for the commission is, do I want a single family in this block or in this area, or I'm okay with a lot of duplex multi-family? Keep in mind again, and use it. For instance, anything that's a little bit above allows a variety of houses. I think that's the question for the commission.
And a third point to dogpile into that is there's no such thing as precedent with zoning. If we approve this case today, there could be a case right next door, and we don't have to make a motion in the same way just because we did on this case.
Was there any concern about the way this particular rezoning could fundamentally change the built character of this area? Was there any consideration whatsoever given to adding the restrictions for a roof type, such as hidden gable, or to prohibit the standard overages of 12 feet that are causing problems in other residential districts, even MSOs, when these townhome structures are being built with greater lot coverage, more height, big blocks so that are just completely change the character of the area. It's actually
So we
some,
really have to make
some,
it
some
forward again. Yeah, so the deed restrictions would restrict this lot to a maximum of 2 dwelling units.
but they can be very tall.
Well, they would be restricted to a maximum height of 30 feet. Again, that's another deed restriction.
Yeah, but 30 feet isn't necessarily tip top, you know, structures can be built, given the way standard is measured in the city. Where you have a fair amount of the structure being taller than 30 feet and result in a building type that's wildly incompatible with here.
Unless I'm mistaken about how height would be measured in the adjacent R5 districts, that height would be the same on the adjacent lots.
Well, my question is why, I guess we keep going back to, you know, if you're making a change to townhomes that need greater density, greater height, and you couple that with the way the height rules are written, you're enabling structures that are changing the character of the area substantially.
So that's a conversation that came up with a lot of other cases like this.
We have to see these.
Yes, exactly. So I think it just shows that we have a need for housing and obviously for a variety of housing located on proximity. It's gonna look the same, like anybody with an R5 can now build and maximize the R5. But again, the question is, do you want 1 unit or 2 units? Because, yeah, I think, yeah, we can address the lot coverage, it's probably a little bit of a bigger building.
The 2 units could be built here that are more compatible with the neighborhood if you dictate a roof size.
Sure, but do we have, I mean, sure, it's up to the commission and it's up to the applicant to volunteer more these restrictions. Keep in mind too, but those are not applicable to the nearby. So if the adjacent comes and they want to build a box that maximizes the R5, they could. So then it's hard when we say, it depends how the restrictions are worded, like to be compatible, but how, because we don't basically put the written restrictions, design standards on the entire street or the entire block. So it's hard to say what the character is. It needs to be really defined in some way. But keep in mind, again, the R5 next door can come and build a box one because that's what they can do.
Commissioner Young, for Commissioner Stanton.
All my sentences would not have question marks after them, so I'll pass.
Okay, Commissioner Stanton.
Yes, Ms. Garza, I want to ask you a question. Under PD 595, you know, when we did that West Oak Cliff area plan, we talked a lot about infill particularly on corner lots, putting more duplexes in those areas. Does the PD 595 speak to how they want to address putting in duplexes at all? In that PD, as far as providing housing?
I'll need to double check.
Pardon? I can't hear.
I'll need to double check. I'll need to double check. She needs to.
Oh, you need to check, okay. Yeah, because I think, my understanding was in trying to promote housing, because when I look at the aerial of this, all of a sudden they'll have small lots and then they'll have a larger lot. And this one is particularly on the corner that does, in my opinion, seem more appropriate to having two or a duplex or the two townhouses, whatever it is they're proposing, because it is a corner lot, because we had discussed that before under that infill. That's all. Yeah, she's looking it up. Are you looking it up? And all of this discussion might have come after that plan was made, but I was just curious how it dealt with placement of duplexes.
Is there a revision of this plan coming forward?
Yes, so we have an authorized hearing for 595, and I think it's in the works. I don't know what the priority is, but it was authorized by council.
Thank you. Where? The comprehensive land use plan committee schedule we just received, that it's scheduled to come to that committee within the next month.
Oh, so there's the area plan.
That's the area.
So that's soon.
So we have an area plan for South Dallas, but we also have an authorized hearing for 595. That's already authorized.
Yeah. Well, then I guess my question was just saying, if we're promoting infill in areas where they're not these exact replica type lots, and this is a corner lot where housing is needed, isn't this appropriate? And obviously Ms. Garza thinks it is, but thank you.
Staff recommendation is approved. Commissioner Mantha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Carter, Commissioner Parker is one of my questions, which was, I thought this, I thought there was an authorized hearing on this. Did staff consider whether or not that area plan and the authorized hearing process would be the more appropriate venue? Considering this type of request, I believe this is our fourth or fifth now in the area. It certainly seems like if we have both of those underway, that would be a holistic review through the individual zoning cases. Is that a consideration for staff?
I would say that, yes, it is a perfect. The last one that we recommended now was a particular, came back to the commission with council direction to reconsider as a TH. So I would say, and it was a unanimous vote at council. So I would say that, yes, as everything, of course, we are trying to make things the right way, like planning and then authorized hearings and all of that. We don't like to do things little by little. It would be ideal to have an authorized hearing to allow these to happen. But we also cannot stop development. There's no such thing. So we cannot like consistently say, hey, everything is going to be denied moving forward because we have the authorized hearing coming. We're aware of that. This is what the market manifests right now, and we have to have an answer. So for our analysis at this point, this makes sense.
And I guess the follow-up that would be, I noticed in our reply forms that while it wasn't, including the time, there was a letter of opposition saying that they did not see this as an appropriate fit for their community, which led to my question, was there a community meeting regarding this request? And are we aware that it was?
Yes, and that's what the applicant.
As the end could get, again, I think the two for me go hand in hand, predictability for the community as well as the market. And I'll look forward to the public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
This is on consent.
May I ask that it be heard individually then?
We'll do that. Take it on consent. Okay, Commissioner Kingston.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Blair.
I have a question, and if if this is a single family lot R5, and it's got a deed restriction on it to limit the number of units to only 2, why would we request and approve a TH3, which allows for 12 units on, TH3 is the most dense of the townhouses, which is no more than 12 dwelling units per each acre. So why would we do a TH3 on a R5 when you're saying this is just infill and not something more obtrusive to the zoning standard?
Because of the block-based continuity in front yard. In duplex is bigger, so if it's a duplex, it's gonna push the entire block to a bigger yard, so it's gonna affect the development, standards for the rest of the block. TH is the one that comes to the same and is not affecting the rest of the block. The big restrictions will apply no more than 2 units.
No, you're missing my question. My question is not why is it a duplex opposed to a TH, it's why is it a TH3 opposed to a TH1?
And that's what I'm saying is the front yard, the one that cannot, that's the conversation we had with all Ryan's cases.
Yeah, so the TH3 of the 3 townhouse districts, the townhouse district in general does not create the block-based continuity issue like the duplex district would. And of the 3 TH districts, TH3 is the only one that allows enough density that you could get 2 units on the lots. TH1 and TH2, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Interesting.
It's a little quirk
So
in the
it's
code, Commissioner, that.
Is the code that is not built to allow gentle density.
Exactly.
It has all the sports in it to make sure that it's hot. And in infill housing is a little bit of a different type of development as opposed to like your normal gentle density. So when you develop a block and the entire block is TH, it's different when you wanna just basically stuck in a little bit of gentle stuff.
So, but you could then conceivably remove the deed restriction that limits it to only 2, and then come back and have 12 units on this one, well,
You can't have 12
based
units on that.
based on based on the size of the lot, you could conceivably have more than the 2 units on this particular lot. They would just be smaller units.
So any kind of change, the deed restrictions are also subject to council approval. So the conversation, is this an appropriate use of land, is gonna happen at that point. Like, do we want more units here? It's gonna be the same question. So it's not like, oh, it can happen without council approval, it's still a zoning change. We had cases where we followed it to zoning
101 that I missed.
This is not zoning 101, this is graduate level. Yeah, this is very counterintuitive.
Now we can like see the computer code execute or something.
Commissioner Houserath, followed by Commissioner Anderson.
Okay, thank you. Would it not be wise to examine our zoning ordinance with respect to duplexes and really, address infill zoning, I guess, by way of ZOAC? Because we're getting more and more of these cases, and our zoning ordinance is really built around the idea of greenfield development, and that's not where our city is any longer. And to be able to address in a more logical, clear, predictable fashion for the applicant how we would do infill and what sort of the rails are, or the curbs on that, because we're having the same conversation regularly. So just a kind of a rhetorical question there.
If you write the letter, I'll sign
So,
It's coming.
we already, I don't know if I talked officially, it's a briefing, I don't know if Daniel can stop me if he wants to. As you are aware, at council, council did approve a contract for a consultant to help us do the code report. We're keeping the contract later this year. So we're waiting, we're trying to hold off onto all of these like code amendments we need because we're trying to get the consultant on board. We have a team with Sarah's team. So we're embarking on a code reform for real. So thank you for that. For sure, housing is gonna be our priority. For sure, infill housing is gonna be our priority.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm wondering, in the absence of area plans and kind of thinking about the future development of this area, do we as commissioners begin to think about like the block-based continuity in a sense of keeping the neighborhoods going along the same patterns? For instance, I noticed there are single-family homes around this block, and we do have a need for housing. However, I don't think that just generally we should find a lot and then put multiple units on it. I think there should be some comprehensive thought about where these communities are going and if that is a good fit, and as opposed to being a one-off. So I'm wondering, do we think of these things, and does staff think of these things comprehensively in the absence of an area plan that would be forthcoming? But since we have this in front of us, we've got to make some decisions, and I think they should be kind of based on where we think the community will go and will accept. I don't know if relating what we're doing to another PD works for this PD. So I'm wondering how we consider the areas around these lots where all of them are single family homes. And then now we want to put in a TH3 in order to meet the demands of housing. But I think it could be, I don't know if it'll be beneficial to that community just by addressing this block phase.
I don't know, like, I think we talked about this. Yes, we did look at it. Our staff recommendation is what's in the report. We looked at what the influence is on the block phase continuity, hence the recommendation for TH3. We are aware that an area plan is coming pretty soon. We're aware of the authorized hearing. We are aware of the trends in the area. We're just trying to respond to an applicant's request. So our professional judgment is what it is. We understand. Also keep in mind, there are a lot of areas of the city that are not covered by area plans. So yeah, these are the tough decisions and conversations we must have.
Commissioner Barton. Did you have a follow-up, Commissioner Anderson? Thank you, sir. Commissioner Bell?
I'm gonna go back to something that Commissioner Young said, and I know barking up the tree, you guys don't understand the problem. Climb up the tree. Yeah, I love climbing trees. So if we are doing a TH3, limited it to 2 units on this lot, and both of these properties are for sale, then though would not each one of those units be with a platted? So or would they be platted as one big plat, although I'm purchasing only half of it and not all of it?
As a proud owner,
She literally lets me do.
as a proud owner of a duplex in Uptown, I will tell you how it works. You buy it by meets and bounds. The plat is the entire property. So I own by meets and bounds my building and the land around it and the yard. It is a meets and bounds. It's a different role.
So just so that this is I guess now educational for me, and I'm assuming it is educational for me, it's educational for somebody else on here. So every time we have a duplex or a townhouse, the plat is the plat. Is that what you're saying?
No. So there are a few things in here. duplex is duplexes, 2 units per lot, and if it's for ownership, and that's again, we're not talking about ownership, non-ownership, we're talking about land uses here. The way I'm telling you, the way it works, if you wanna own it, you buy it by means and bounds. Townhouse is not a land use. So we have single family, duplex, and multifamily. So multifamily can be for rent or can be for ownership, which is your condo. The condos, you can own just the unit, exactly, or if they are like adjoining one another, you can also own them like in a duplex manner, like meets and bounds. There's also shared access development where you own up to the middle of the street. So all of these, again, how you own it, ownership, rental, I don't think it's up for this commission, even for staff to decide. We just look at it. Single family, 1 unit, 2 units, more than 2. And then the district, RDTHMF.
Okay.
Commissioner Stan?
And that's,
Yeah, and I think as a follow-up to Commissioner Blair, when I look at these patterns, okay, of this particular lot, this could be 2 separate lots based on the pattern here. It could easily be, because you can see on the aerial that there are many lots, that it could almost be 3 lots based on a pattern here. But what I'm saying is that I think based on that, the fact that it could be in this lot pattern, 2 separate lots, that it makes sense that you could have 2 units on it, even though it's only platted as one, as a duplex. I mean, it seems to accommodate that to me.
how can 5,000 square feet be changed to 2 lots in a R5 district?
Well, look at that. Look at these.
I
See, a lot of them are already smaller lots than that. I mean, they haven't kept with that pattern in the area. I mean, that's what's kind of interesting about it. I mean, if you look to, would that be the kind of southwest? Southwest, look at the way those lot patterns are.
That's probably an artifact of the old industrial zone in the area that
Yeah.
didn't have any mental lots.
Sorry, a lot, it's just part of a
So
block.
probably the ones that are smaller than 5,000 are not platted yet. It looks like they're part of a block. So
So, I
I mean,
mean,
it's a legacy.
Or they may have been platted into the part of them.
I don't,
The ownership says it's part of a block, so they were never been lotted out, which is an industrial way of doing things.
and I think, I guess that here's another question I would ask. I mean, because this goes to Commissioner Housewright's comment, how are we going to deal in the future with these long, narrow lots? You know, that's what keeps coming back to us, is how do you utilize the property when you've got these long, narrow ones where it would make sense to put 2 housing units as opposed to having some shotgun house going all the way down a very narrow lot.
I think that's a very good conversation, one for the area plan for this area, for the authorized hearing for PD 595, and then obviously for our code reform. Because it kind of like gets in, and I think that's the big problem with the code right now, that we don't have design standards. So again, going back, like R5 also can deliver a lot of things that are not compatible by right. So I think we kind of like have to start accepting the idea we need to start looking into design standards moving forward with the entire code.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Rhodes, please.
I think this is probably a question for Ms. Garza. We've heard a lot of discussion about the work that's being done on PD 595 and the South Dallas Fair Park area plan. Can you speak to the process through which these volunteer deed restrictions were developed? Are these just things that are taken out of the box, or were they the product of engagement that Commissioner Wheeler had with the applicant and the community?
Did you hear his question? He asked whether or not the deed restrictions came out from conversations with you, or if they were a product of community meetings with former Commissioner Wheeler.
They were brought, I let them know like my comments, and then they said they wanted to apply for those deed restrictions. And they did see other cases around there, but they were also volunteering.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You may have to speak right with the little microphone.
Oh.
Yeah.
That the applicant, like I sent them comments, and then they asked that they wanted to volunteer deed restrictions. And they also saw other cases similar to this one, so they were aware of those other cases as well.
Okay, in addition to those other similar cases that we've had, are you aware whether Commissioner Wheeler had extensive conversations with these applicants in the community regarding the deed restrictions and other development requirements?
I'm not aware of this applicant having
Okay.
conversations.
Okay, but if those happened, okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioners? We'll move on. Let's keep going. Case number 7. Munoz. Bill Line. There she is. Good morning.
Good morning. Just a moment while I try to get this situated. Now, this case was previously briefed. Would you like it to be rebriefed?
This was briefed before. Were there any changes, any updates?
No changes, no updates. It's remained the same.
Okay, thank you very much. So then we'll go. Are there any questions on this case, Commissioners? Go to 8. This has not been briefed before. Commissioner, why don't we take it's just gonna be an extensive brief. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? It's 10 o'clock. Let's take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 10:10.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Yeah, Hawaii.
Doors here.
Yeah, so I'm in Hawaii, so it was get sand and so. And lots of trees. Lots of trees.
50 acres. Here's blocking each feet of line. Yes. 15,000 square foot line. Trying to draw a sense that it was clear budget. In 1965. Policy decision.
And anything, getting used to have a,
Like it's on
top of the screen.
So my mind, that's a little greater than. Case number 2.
He would die. He would just take it and just.
Son is like that.
Our
Oldest son is like
rezone that county.
that's smart. My oldest one is like man.
So glad this one.
He would take yours and
What's the difference?
he would change the.
On my life decision here about versus here. I go up
This, it's not, it's like the material is not adhesive to your hand. So it just makes sense.
Because the whole point of 503 is that there are instances where subdivisions
We pass our kids.
even
So
though
work that we can.
clients.
It's bizarre.
I hate forgetting your cities.
Oh, okay. I'm ready.
I told her that they can put them in. I'm doing a second.
We're back on the record. Going to case number 8. Well, the planner is handling the case and taking the conversation. Ready, sir? Yes. It is. Thank you.
Get us off.
Yeah.
Yes, please do.
Oh, I'm sure you. I'm 2 minute meeting. So. I can't believe it.
Okay, everyone, next case is C 212307. This request is for a plan development district for MU3 mixed-use district uses on properties owned in RR Regional Retail District and MU1 mixed-use district and plan development district number 804. It's located on the north line of Walnut Hill Lane between North Central Expressway and Vanderbilt Lane. It's about 19.23 acres. Location map showing the property in city limits. Aerial map with the area outlined in blue. And the zoning map with surrounding zoning districts and land uses. So this is a very crowded map. I know there's a wide variety of zoning in this area, various base districts, PDs, et cetera. To the north are medical clinic and office uses. Immediately to the east, across Vanderbilt Lane in PD 519 is a dark rail location. To the south, on the other side of Walnut Hill Lane, again, a variety of uses, financial institution, general merchandise, medical clinic, office. The hard corner of 75 and Walnut Hill, which is not a part of this request, currently developing a medical clinic. And then due west across 75, undeveloped property, surface parking, restaurant uses, personal service. There's also some multifamily over there. Like I said, a lot of uses. So the background on this is currently developed with a variety of retail, restaurant, personal service, and office uses. The applicant proposes to consolidate the zoning of the entire property under a new PD for MU3 district uses. For now, they intend to continue the use of the existing shopping center while allowing for mixed uses, including multifamily. They also propose a conceptual plan with the property divided into 5 sub-areas. Sub-areas A1, A2, and B comprise the existing shopping center and surface parking. Sub-area C is currently undeveloped, but it's proposed as multifamily with structured parking and ground level retail. And then sub-area D is proposed to be developed in a future phase. I don't know a ton about sub-area D right now, other than what's in the PD conditions. These conditions provide development standards for all sub-areas that will allow for future redevelopment of the entire property and then with mixed uses, including multifamily. The conditions also include standards for parking, signs, urban design, mixed income housing. And with this case, the proposal also includes a development plan for sub-area C, which will be developed in the current phase. In addition to that, they're also proposing a tree preservation plan that would apply to the entire property, as well as a pedestrian improvement phasing plan showing standards for sidewalks and buffers along the perimeter of the site, as well as interior to the site. The proposal also includes, like I said, incentives for mixed income housing, types of dwelling unit density, and this is just a quick breakdown of that. I'll go into more detail in a second. But so the base district proposed MU3, the applicant's proposing to tie the bonuses to dwelling unit density. However, in the base MU3 district, there is no maximum dwelling unit density. For the PD in subareas A1, A2, and B, they're proposing a maximum of 50 dwelling units per acre if no mixed income housing is provided. But they would have an additional 25 dwelling units per acre in bonus if those affordable units are provided. Subarea C would be a maximum of about 83 dwelling units per acre at market rate, and then they would be granted an additional 33 dwelling units per acre in bonus for mixed income units. And in subarea C, maximum 85 dwelling units per acre with additional 34 dwelling units per acre in bonus for affordable housing. We typically include a development standards comparison in these presentations. This one's pretty elaborate considering the number of existing districts. So I'll just refer you guys to the case report if you'd like to see more detail there. And then updates since the last meeting. Since the last meeting, the applicant has updated their conditions regarding permitted uses, height, stories, dwelling unit density, signs, mixed income housing, and urban design standards. All of the proposed plans have also been updated to reflect those changes in the conditions. With what was published in the docket, the applicant is also proposing an SUP for multifamily and retirement housing in subareas A1, A2, and B. Staff is not able to support this change. You can read my full rundown of that in the new permitted uses section in the case report. But generally speaking, we just feel it would not be conducive to the development and redevelopment of the property. It says staff recommends that if any additional restrictions on multifamily or retirement housing are desired, they be made in the PD conditions proposed with this request and not through a separate set of SUP conditions in the future. And then also one update since the publication of the docket. This was just a typo. But in the permitted uses, a financial institution with drive-in window is proposed subject to an SUP, not development impact review. It's just an error we overlooked. Having said all that, let's move to site photos. This is on North Central Expressway looking east along the western perimeter of the site. And then we're just going to be going towards the intersection around the bend. So this is moving south along the access road, still looking east. And then this is on Walnut Hill Lane looking northwest. You can see that retaining wall with retail buildings in the background. This is the signalized intersection into the property on Walnut Hill Lane. And we're just kind of moving east. These are some detailed shots of that area. And you can see this is more on-site, still looking northwest, some of the existing retail there. And this is moving to the interior of the existing shopping center. And there's been a lot of redevelopment put into the site over the past 10 years or so. So these are just some shots of that redeveloped area. You can see there's some existing open space. A lot of photos. And this is back on Walnut Hill Lane. Still looking northwest, we're going to be in the east now. That street frontage. This is a pedestrian walkway leading from Walnut Hill Lane to the shopping center. So moving further east, this is what would be subarea A2, I believe, and also subarea B. This side of the property is less developed. However, there are some restaurant buildings down here at the intersection of Walnut Hill and Vanderbilt. More detailed shots, and this is back on site looking at what is proposed to be subarea C. This is a walkway leading from the site to the alley north of the site. And this is on Vanderbilt looking west at the eastern edge of the property, and you can see that alley along the rear of the site. Surrounding uses, here in the background, you can see some of the office uses to the north. Along the right side of this photo, you can see more of those office uses. This is a little further east, some more office uses. It's a medical office there in the background. And then looking to the east of the site, you can see the dark rail line. And this is south of the site along Walnut Hill. You can see some of those office uses and retail uses there back at the signal intersection. This is the conceptual plan. Like I said, it was updated between the last meeting and now. You can see the outline of the different sub areas. So sub area A2 here is the existing shopping center, open space within. Sub area A1, that's where the surface parking for that shopping center is currently. Sub area B is down where those restaurant uses were. Sub area C is up here. This is proposed to be developed with multifamily with ground floor retail. This will be developed with this current phase. And then sub area D is back here along the access road. This is the tree preservation plan the applicant proposes with this request. You can see there's a lot of existing trees in the shopping center area, as well as the driveway leading off of this sticking light tree. There's also a lot here along Walnut Hill. Pedestrian improvement plan showing the standards for sidewalks and landscape buffers and whatnot along the perimeter, as well as interior to the site. There's a lot of detail in this one, so I would encourage you to look at the full-size version available online if you have specific questions. And then just a clip from that plan. These are 3 different types of roadway cross sections that the applicant proposes for the interior of the site. And then last but not least, this is the development plan for the proposed sub area C. You can see some pockets of open space here. There would be ground floor retail in this section, structured parking back here that would connect to the rest of the site. All that good stuff. And then before I stop talking, I did want to outline the differences between staff's recommendation and the applicant's request of the mixed income housing. The staff recommendation for sub areas A1, A2, and B is that 5% of the units are available to households at 50% to 60% AMFI. If the property is developed with the full amount of units available, 5% of that would be about 45 units. And then in sub areas C and D, staff is recommending 5% at each income bands, 51 to 60, 61 to 80, and 81 to 100. Again, if those are developed with the full number of units, that could be a max of 42 per income band for the sub areas. So staff's recommendation would lead to a total number of affordable units possible of 171. And then this is just kind of breaking that down a little further. That would be 87 units at income band 3 and then 42 at both income bands 2 and 1. And then the applicant's request is published in the docket. Sub areas A1, A2, B, and C would be 5% at 61 to 80, 5% at 81 to 100. That would be 67 units per income band. And then in sub area D, the applicant is requesting 5% at each income band. So that's 21 units within that sub area. That would be a total of 197 units if the site is developed with the maximum number allowable. And again, 21, 51 to 60, and then 88 at income bands 2 and 3. Just some further consideration of that. So staff's standard recommendation for PDs with mixed income housing in a C MBA area is a minimum of 5% at 51 to 60% AMFI. The applicant's request is published in the docket is not in line with this. Only about 1.6% of the total allowable units would be at that 5% at 51 to 60. I do want to kind of break down a C MBA area a little bit, what that means. So A, B, and C MBA areas are the most high opportunity, most affluent areas within the city of Dallas. These areas have great access to quality schools, good jobs, transit, public facilities, grocery stores, retail. There's a lot of access to opportunity in these areas. So we really feel as staff that these areas need to include units affordable to households that HUD classifies as very low income, 51 to 60% of the median income in the Dallas area. In addition to that standard recommendation of 5%, staff's recommendation goes above and beyond this standard due to the immediate access to transit and the high probability for this area to become very dense, walkable, mixed use. Although the applicant's request, as published in the docket, would provide 26 more affordable units overall, staff's recommendation would provide 66 more units at 51 to 60% AMFI. And then I wanted to give that breakdown because I know in the past when we've talked about these cases, you guys have asked like, okay, that's 5% of whatever it is. Like, how many units is that actually? You know, kind of flesh that out a little bit more. I wanted to add this as well to kind of fill out that picture more. So these are the HUD income limits. These are current as of June 15th of this year. This shows what someone at 50% of area median income makes, what someone at 100% or under 25% makes. This first column would be an individual, like a household of one. And then this column here is a household of four. So it's more of a, you know, family if you want to call it that. So an individual at 50% of AMFI, you know, that's income band 3, makes on average $36,000 a year. If you split that out into monthly income and then take 30% of that monthly income, they can afford about $900 a month in rent. This is kind of an old standard that HUD developed in 1981, but it's still kind of a good working definition. If you're paying more than 30% of your monthly income in rent, you are considered housing cost burden. If you pay 50% or more of your monthly income in rent, you're considered severely housing cost burden. This is a pretty flexible term. If you make $500,000 a year and you're paying 40% a month in rent, you're probably not in any way cost burdened of anything. But if you're a 50% AMI and you're paying more than about $900 or $1,000 in rent, you can't afford to get to work. You can't afford groceries. You know, you can't afford anything. So yeah, don't want to go too much into that. I did also want to kind of give a City of Dallas employee analogy to this. So this 80% AMFI right here, 57 a year for an individual. We just hired 2 planer ones. I'll be joining Donna Mormon's team. That's about what they make. Those are professional level jobs. They require a master's degree. And that's 80% of AMI. Someone who works at a Taco Deli that's at the shopping center currently, someone who would work at a restaurant or a dry cleaners or something, doesn't make 80% AMI. They don't have a master's degree. 100% AMI, that's about what we offer senior planners, and then 125% AMI, that's about what I make. I've done some digging. Rents for a 700 square foot 1-bedroom apartment in this area go for about $2K a month. 700 square feet, 1-bedroom apartment. I don't like the idea of paying $2,000 a month in rent for a home on her own, but I can't afford that. Someone who makes significantly less than I do cannot afford that. So I hope that kind of paints a picture. And with that, staff's recommendation is approval subject to conceptual plan, development plan, a tree preservation plan, a pedestrian improvement plan, and staff's recommended conditions as briefed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mulkey. You did paint an amazing picture, and I see Thor over there nodding his head, being the entire time. So Thor is here. If we have any questions in terms of housing commissioners, we'll start off with Commissioner Sanders.
Okay. My first question, Ryan, and I'm never as artful as Commissioner Hampton. She prepares and has her questions in advance. But okay, would you not say that this site is a planner's dream in regard to high transit, mixed use, no residential around it to affect anything? So it's a live where you work dream. Is that correct?
That's correct. I also might posit that it's Commissioner Young's dream because it's not adjacent to any existing.
I was going to say, no RPS. No RPS to consider. Okay, that being said, and before we get into what would be an obvious question, I'm going to settle that right now. Are you aware that the motion I intend to make this afternoon removes the requirement for the SUP, and that you are equally aware that the reason that the applicant and I even proposed that was, since this phase is not going to be done from 12 to 15 years, we were trying to make a condition where they came back to CPC. However, you informed me that under an SUP, it's more restrictive not more expansive. So therefore, that condition will be removed.
For the residential multifamily.
Hmm?
Removing the SUP for the multifamily.
Yes, for the multifamily, correct,
A through.
not for the ones that require SUPs. Is that correct, Mr. Martin?
I'm aware of that, and that's a correct explanation.
Okay. Now, going to another thing again, so it gives a up-to-date comparison. Are you also aware that my motion later today is going to include a change in the MIHB requirements? And do you understand them to be the following? Okay, here I go. That in the initial development, which is sub-area C, okay, the one that's going to be developed in the existing center, because, and I know I'm not supposed to discuss this, don't stop me, Daniel, because there seems to be a fairly decent price point. Okay, their band of MIHB is going to be, as it's stated presently, the 61 to 80 and the 81 to 100. And it would be 5% of the 61 to 80, 5% of the 81 to 100.
Yes, the slide on the screen, this is
Okay.
the applicant's request.
Okay. However, then my motion is going to include a change for sub-area A1, A2, and B. And what that is going to be is what I have proposed for D, which is 5% at the 51 to 60, 5% at the 61 to 80, and 5% at the 81 to 100.
That's correct.
So that will be in both sub-area D and sub-area A1, A2B, and then we keep what we've already put in C. So we have increased, my motion will increase considerably the MIH. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you also understand that we've also have, even though they're not under Commissioner Kingston's exact definition of micro units, that we have gotten the applicant to agree, and my motion and part of this says the same thing, that 20 units in the building in sub-area C will be at 600 square feet or less. 20 units in the building in sub-area D will be at 600 square feet or less. And 20 units in sub-area A1, B, A2, B will be at 600 square feet or less, thus providing what I have started terming a Dallas micro unit.
That's correct, and if I could just use that question to pontificate a little bit more. So I'm not gonna say which apartment complex this is specifically, because we can't do that. There's a very comparable multifamily use across 75, like just immediately across the highway. That also has some studio units that are less than 600 square feet. I did some digging and I got a quote on one of those units. At 528 square feet for a 12-month lease, that's still $1,400 a month. Again, that's at 80% AMI, so like one of our planner ones could potentially afford to live in a studio there. And then I'll also point out here where my cursor is, this unit is not available until November 7th, which leads me to believe that those studios, micro units, whatever you want to call them, are in short supply and very high demand, and still pretty costly.
Mm-hmm. Correct. No, I agree with you on that. Okay, so you have that, and then I want to bring up another thing. Are you, okay, do you agree that one of the things that all of us have been able to come to is the fact that with the DART station there, making sure that this shopping center is made to interact with the DART station, that we've put in a great deal of pedestrian amenities, particularly on that alley where the crosswalk from the DART station, you basically are going to an alley that's going to be totally improved with walkability. So instead of people getting off DART, crossing the street and having to walk all the way around Walnut Hill, they will be able to walk on beautiful footpaths where we put lights and all of this, and go into the back of the center, which will interact with the alley. That the alley will be very pedestrian friendly, and the applicant is going to repave the entire alley in conjunction with the completion of the first entity, sub-area C.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, those are all the questions I have for
Thank you,
you.
Commissioner Standard. Question, Commissioner Young?
Yes, one teensy question, I think I already know the answer to. The 20 units that must contain 600 square feet or less of floor area. Am I right with the MIA provisions against disproportionately placing MIA units in small units will apply?
That's correct. Yeah, so for affordable units, they couldn't put all of them as studios. They have to be evenly dispersed among the various types of units available that would be available to someone who's looking for a market rate.
So if there are, I don't know what, 1,400 total units?
The whole site would be like 1740, and then there would be 100.
So if there are two, let's say under Commissioner Standard's motion, 240 MIA units, only, what is that, about 15% of them could be
Right, yeah, some of them can be, but then the rest have to be evenly dispersed among 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carpenter.
That's across the entire building as well, so they can't be concentrated on the floor. They can't have any less design standard, they have to be built to the same standards as the other.
No portion. Linoleum.
Right. When everybody else is in there.
Commissioner Carpenter.
My question for Mr. Irwin is about the apparent desire to preserve the existing mature trees on Walnut Hill. Because here it's saying you have to have a minimum 8-foot wide unobstructed sidewalk and a minimum 8-foot wide buffer, so not moving out the time, measure tape or anything. It's giving flexibility here for reducing or relocating as necessary to buffer zone. Is there room there for an 8-foot sidewalk without any deviations and keep those trees?
It's been a while since.
No. The answer is no.
I thought there would be when I first reviewed it, but I had not looked at that.
Yeah.
Good job.
There's not some flexibility needed in that language.
Well,
Could be, we could look at that, I'll look at that,
Yeah.
let's do the existing conditions, what the trees are in, and I'll have a discussion here with David as well as the sidewalk issues.
Now, another question for Mr. Navarre is about the blanket reduction for non-residential parking requirements of 1 to 500. Could you talk a little bit about the justification for that? Because I'm more familiar with cases where perhaps an office applicant is asking to change from 1 to 333 to 1 to 375 corners or something, and we're asking for parking, justification analysis, and this just seems, this is a pretty substantive reduction for a lot of uses that are, for the
Surely, I think that we have to understand where we are. Very excited about this place, and I mean, if anyone remembers this place, being back to the days when it looked so ugly, back when Dave and Buster's was there and dark and yet we were all there. But now it's amazing. My kids go to swimming across there and the trees inside. It's truly a mix of uses. That's just lacking the people who could live there. So as far as parking, I strongly encourage the commission to take into account the mix of uses. The fact that people will not be all parking at the same time, that's just inherent with Rankin, just not a matter of I live and work there necessarily, but just the fact that not everyone's gonna be there at the same time. That by itself is a reduction. How much, we can talk all day about how much, but it's a reduction. The fact that they're immediately adjacent to a train station has to be taken into account. If you live there and you have, as a renter, or work there, and you have parking issues, you won't be satisfied. If you own a shop here and you have parking issues, you wouldn't be satisfied. I think that in my opinion, those are strong justifications to understand that parking will not be straight through a ratio with 1 for something. The exact number though, I would refer to the applicants in parking analysis.
John, is it concerned at all that, since this one of the material reduction for a lot of uses, is there a possibility to pack uses that, that it will attract a magnet for uses that require great deal of parking somewhere else, but somehow here they.
So actually, I also, as a consultant, did a lot of studies at this site specifically to bring in more restaurant. And in an effort to do that, we were able to bring in an urgent exercising facility. It's huge. You walk in, it's so wide open, and it's just a place where physical therapy provide amenities. That was the only way that this site was able to bring in restaurants, by opening up this huge space with a lower ratio. It's the mix of uses that can actually make it work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Housefront, followed by Commissioner Rubin.
Here, I just have some detailed questions in the draft ordinance. On page 8-25, there is mention of 15 district identification signs that can be up to 100 square feet in area. Ask a question to staff, does that strike you as a lot? Because it strikes me as a lot. And if they just kept their existing zoning in the shopping center, would they be allowed to do that?
It's internal, not external.
Yeah, I don't know if Jason Poole is with us today. He did have some commentary on the signs section.
I know the answer.
I believe he kind of recommended just going with standard code for the sign regulations. He did not have any objections to the language being proposed. It's just that he thought that the sign ordinance as it's in code would be sufficient as well.
Well, maybe we address that at the hearing. I'm going to keep moving. I've been on the commission for a number of years now, and I'm finally going to flag a question that I have on lots of cases. And this is why we are asking people to put a bike rack at the perimeter of the site on street frontages. Why, if I'm riding a bike, would I not want to take that bike up to my destination rather than leaving it at the street? That's
what I would want to do. I would take it in the building if it were me. But yeah, I believe that's some kind of standard language we've developed about, street furniture, bike racks, benches, trash cans, things like that.
Commissioner Housefront, that is already an adjustment that Commissioner Stander will make in her motion.
Okay. And then on the lighting verbiage, there's two different places that describe outdoor lighting, pedestrian lighting, and they seem to be somewhat in conflict with one another. The first mention is at the bottom of page 828 that talks about spacing and directed downward, and the height of the poles can only be 20 feet, which is fine. But then when I go to page 833, I get what I think is a more helpful it's more of a performance kind of criteria about 1.5 foot candles, et cetera. It seems like you don't need both. And I have a strong preference for the one on 833 that's more performance based. Is that something that we could clean up?
Yeah, I think there's a possibility there. The language on 833 is more or less lifted from the mixed income housing design standards. it's kind of intended to apply, more to like a multifamily development, it could be applied to Sudbury C as a site. However, it could be applied to the entire site, which is kind of the intent of the condition that starts on 828. That's intended more to apply to, sidewalks along the perimeter or in the alley. Whether those, two conditions are consolidated or, one is clarified to apply to the perimeter, one is clarified to apply to the interior. I think there's definitely a possibility there.
That would be great. Thank you. That's all.
Commissioner Rubin?
Thanks, Mr. Mulkey, could you pull back up your slides on the staff applicant and the commissioner's motion on affordable housing real quick?
Sure, give me 1 second.
So staff is a total of 171 at those various bands, right?
Yeah, so staff's total is less than the applicant's request and the commissioner's motion in terms of total number of units. However, we have the most at 51 to 60.
Okay, and can I see applicant real quick, just to refresh me?
Go to the summary.
Perfect, 197.
And then the commissioners is the most and has more at 51 to 60 than the applicant, not quite as much as staff.
Okay, and a total of 240. So I guess my question, and this may be for the gentleman from housing, whose name Mr. Erickson, thank you, does the fee in lieu vary based on what percentages at what income bands we require? So if we require, let's just say, we're to require 10% at 51 to 60 versus 5% at 51 to 60, and the applicant went with the fee in lieu instead of providing the units on site, does the fee in lieu change?
Hi, Paul Erickson, Assistant Director of Housing. The fee in lieu is not based on percent of units or number of units. The fee in lieu is based on residential square footage times the MBA category, depending on the height of the building provided. So if it's under 6 stories, 6 to 8 or 9 to 12, there's a different fee associated with each MBA category. The MBA category for categories A through F are higher than G through I. So the developer will pay a higher amount per square foot of residential provided. And that formula allows them to opt out of providing on-site units. It's one or the other. The developer will either provide the on-site units through the MICB to get the bonus, or they will pay the fee. And so there's an amount of affordable units that will make sense to the developer to choose the on-site recommendation. It's typically around that 5%, which allows us to get those reserved units and developments such as these.
Okay.
When we ask for more, sometimes they will opt out and just pay a fee in lieu to get no on-site units. However, we generate a large check that allows us to invest in more affordable units and other developments where we need it. And so that's the general way that program works.
I don't believe that we have final numbers for residential square footage for this development, do we? That would be used for the fee calculation?
The only one that's concrete at this point is the multifamily proposed for sub-area C.
Okay.
Remainder development, I believe their timeline is like 10 to 15 years before they start to look at redeveloping the remainder of the site, especially the existing shopping center, because it has been so successful.
Okay. And I know Mr. Erickson just said that it could, it's either one or the other. It's the fee in lieu or on-site provision. If there are multiple sub areas developed at different times, can they go with the fee in lieu for one sub area and on-site provision for another, or do they have to make the choice for the entire PD at the outset?
So because it's gonna be considered one site, it falls under that one site. If there were multiple sites, there would be different applications for those different parcels. But as the whole thing is gonna be rezoned into one new site, it's all into the one time.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Because it considers the project as one project, developed over a phase of years, is regardless, it's still the amount of square footage that will be approved at this time of application, for the density bonuses.
But we only have the square footage on one sub-district at the moment. So how do we determine how, if they went with fee in lieu, how do we determine fee in lieu?
The whole point of the sub area was to do that. The whole point of making sub areas was to say, if this is gonna be developed in 15 years at 20 stories, 240 square feet, 240 feet high, that we're trying to say specifically, because there might be in a sub area a totally different partner in the development who has a different idea towards fee in lieu. So we were looking at it the whole time that the sub areas each had very specific mixed income housing bonuses that applied to the sub area, plus the density per acre, units per acre, which would be defined. So basically, if you were working this out, you wouldn't look at it as one area of square footage. You would look at the sub areas, which is how it's defined in the PD.
I'll have to get back to you on the sub area question then, because it's my understanding that it's the one site that has been looked at traditionally through the program. You have other advice on that, right?
I don't know, that's my question, because I think my impression was, I don't know, regardless of planning, like, what do you get at permit?
Because
I
you
don't
know
know.
the amount of the total residential allowed by the zoning district. You know the amount of density bonus you're getting, so you're calculating the maximum amount of residential square footage that would be allowed in those sub-districts now. Regardless of what they end up doing their design wise, you're looking at the maximum amount allowed by right.
Oh, okay. Allowable.
That doesn't, this,
I don't.
this is completely, I have to say, in the process, this is completely different than where we have been, because this is going to be like, if something isn't built for 15 years, and my understanding, for instance, about fee in lieu, is the height of the building could affect what the square footage calculus is, that it's a lower one for non-steel construction and a higher based on this. So how in the world could you phase in something? Because the whole point of this is to make it a more urban design 15 years from now. And for instance, in this case, there's one partner in sub-area C that's building. Well, sub-area D, it's not that they're selling it off, but they may bring in a different developer for that. So how does he exercise his option for fee in lieu if you're saying this is on the whole property?
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on the sub-district things, because my understanding of the program right now is it's based on the one site.
Well, I wish we'd known that sooner than for 2 years.
No, I don't tell you, it's an ongoing conversation with
You know, because this was an integral part of the conversations and the negotiations for everything we got. And as you just heard me saying, it's 15% in one area. And quite frankly, we're put in a position, this brings up a whole issue that Commissioner Rubin has brought up, is when I'm negotiating with an applicant and he can look at this, and I think we all need to look at this very carefully. If you advertise what your quote to their sense, their loss is, I'm looking from the applicant standpoint. I realize they're getting a bonus for doing mixed income, so you'd have to weigh it with that bonus. But if you just took the loss and you said, well, in 4 years, for instance, on the sub-area C, the fee in lieu would end up being about $2 million, okay? Well, if you calculate $2 million over a loss of 15 years of 8 to 10 million, you pay the $2 million. So in our negotiations, it makes it very difficult to get some of these lower bands, because they're gonna say, if you do that to me, I'm going fee and lieu. I mean, we're gonna have to, I think, revisit from a housing standpoint, how, you know, we don't want every, what you were talking about, what do you call this, a CMBA area, is that what you called it? We don't want every developer in a CMBA area paying fee and lieu and not putting in a perfect area like this. If any place want you to live where you work, but I am dealing with people talking about, well, it behooves me to pay the fee and lieu. You know, if you're wondering why in sub-area C, I didn't put the 51% ban.
Mr. Erickson, you're gonna circle back on this later in the hearing. Commissioner Rubin, let's go back to you. I know you had some more questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back on these three proposals. You know, there's the motion that Commissioner Standard intends to make, staff's request, applicant, or staff's recommendation, applicant's request. Do you have a sense of which, if any, will trigger the developer to select the fee and lieu based on the different, you know, I know that you're not necessarily able to see the performance, but, you know, can you do any prognostication there?
Is that a question for me, Vice Chair?
Mr. Erickson,
Either one of you. I'm just trying to figure out what's likely to happen here in terms of getting fee and lieu versus on-site provision based on the three things.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the conversation we've been having here in terms of go one site, you consider it the whole residential square footage, or how can we handle the sub-districts over a base period? So I'm trying to get clarification on that right now, because I don't know that we've seen a lot of cases that look 15 years from now, the zoning requests are getting down, develop 15 years from now. Most of our cases have been on-site ready to develop and even these.
Mr. Erickson, I'm sorry, it's pretty hard to hear you. Be able to get closer to the microphone?
You need to, why don't you move up some forward, you don't mind.
Thank you. I was saying that most of the requests for MICB so far have been sites that are being ready to develop now. They're seeking their zoning change, they're ready to break ground, they move forward. This notion of a sub-district being delayed for 15 years due to phasing, I don't know the answer directly, because to date, the requirements have looked at the entire site and residential square footage per site. But I'm having the team dive a little bit deeper to see if we carved out anything for sub-districts specifically that have a later phasing to understand that. But to my knowledge right now, it's always been the site that's looked at for the new zoning and what's allowed per that zoning and where the residential buildings are being.
Okay, well, let's just take out of the equation for the moment the sub-districts that are going to be developed down the road and just talk about the sub-districts that are coming up for development soon. Do you have a sense of whether those would go fee and lieu or MIH under the various proposals?
I don't have a sense of that. I mean, according to the proposal, it looks like there was on-site provisions being suggested by the applicant as well as staff.
Well, we have the applicant's own suggestion, and I guess we could, whether they ultimately intend to do it, you know, their own suggestion, just pay the fee and lieu is a separate question, but there's also a staff recommendation for more MIH on site and a motion that we're going to see for more MIH on site. Do you have a sense of whether those two would lead to the fee and lieu being paid or on-site provision? And I know you're not dealing with all the data here. I'm just curious.
Not today.
Okay.
I can answer that.
Yeah, I mean,
I can answer that.
you know what?
Yeah, I mean, the applicant, I mean, here's what the thinking is. The reason we put, the applicant obviously was not going to do the 51 to 60%, the C, the one that's going to do it immediately. So I already knew that that was our negotiation as opposed to fee and lieu. That's why it is that way. I'm being totally transparent. Now, to the others, because those are not going to be developed until the D will not be available for 12 years. The other A1, you know, this shopping center's got some life into it because a lot of money's been put in. That won't be developed for 15 years. So this is the problem in a thing. We are phasing an existing shopping center, and we're doing the zoning now in a PD. But the applicant has agreed, because my feeling is in the future, there will be more need for those 15%, asking for more, and the 3 bands, and they've agreed to that. Now, can we say in 15 years, we don't know, the fee in lieu might be a lot more then, so they will do it. We can't do that, but what we're doing now is putting the requirement in. So they would have to come back here if they wanted to lift that requirement or pay the fee in lieu, because things could be totally different in zoning in 15 years.
Commissioner, you have a follow-up, sir?
No.
Does that make sense? I don't know if it does.
Just something to add to the earlier point from the zoning perspective. I don't know that we've had a lot of PDs with mixed income housing that work for single sites. You know, I'm trying to think back, but I think this is the first time that it's this multi-phase sort of thing where we're setting up entitlements for a number of phases. So I think we've broken the system. Congratulations.
Well, I would like to add that, Mr. Maltby, were you aware that when we wrote the mixed income housing development bonus, which was called voluntary inclusionary zoning back in the day at ZOAC, we never considered this.
Yeah.
We never talked about it, just we didn't expand the rubber band that far. So yeah, we're kind of a little over our skis here in the new territory. Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Young.
I'm gonna have the same question everybody else has asked, but a different way. I think the problem is we don't know what you mean by the term site. That's not a term that we use on our commission. We speak of a PD, we speak of a lot, we speak of a building permit. Is a site, is each building permit a separate site? Is each lot a separate site? Is each zoning district a separate site? That would be what I would find helpful to know.
Understand. I will get clarification on that as well, because to date, doing this as a PD as a whole is not something that we've necessarily looked at. It's been the individual parcel that's applying for their density bonus to be able to build, which is the same concept as the sub-districts here. But I need to get clarification on what's going on.
It seems to me that a PD is no different than a big chunk of straight multifamily zoning. And if I buy 5 acres of that chunk, am I a separate site? Or is the whole chunk a site? Anyway, I don't see a critical question.
In PD 15, it's that way. They have sub areas in PD 15. And so when those people, like if Hanover buys one site, they're dealt with individually. If, what was the other one I did? Because I've already done 2 there. I can't think of the Crawley Brothers does the second one. Okay. They're a different site and they're paying their fee in lieu separate and dealing with the MIH separately in PD 15. So I don't understand.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, okay.
I'll get clarification for you soon.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Any other
We're
questions?
creating something new.
That's the scary part. Any other questions, commissioners?
Oh, I have one other question. Okay. Are you aware, I'm doing one of my are you awares when I'm making a statement. Okay. As far as the thing about the sidewalks, one of the things about what we were talking about in the sidewalks in this PD is that at first it said removing all buffers, and that we changed that to say there must be some buffer. But in fact, the conversation that came up is correct. You could not put an 8-foot and have an 8-foot or whatever the buffer requirement is there. We know that because there are huge live oaks that have been there for years. But you could, there are ways to wind it around and even make it ADA compliant or get a smaller buffer. Obviously, you don't want to be walking on Walnut Hill, correct, with no buffer. I mean, there's no buffer right now, and I can tell you, it's not a good thing. But even a 2-foot buffer to save the trees is better than no buffer. But this would only be in very small areas of the property. Are you aware of that, Ron?
I'm aware of it.
Okay. And are you aware of one other thing? Just want to make sure so that we can clarify this. That part of the thing about the lighting that we were dealing with is that we were saying pedestrian lighting, and because once again, this is a different situation, we're adding a lot of pedestrian lighting with the alley. But at the same time, there's that institutional parking lot lighting that exists in this old suburban style parking lot that will stay there for some years until there's a complete renovation. So we're dealing with both aspects of that, correct?
Yes, and to Commissioner Housewright's point, I think between now and the hearing, we can kind of clarify or consolidate or whatever we need to do.
Correct.
2 different lighting conditions.
And the last thing, are you aware that my motion includes, once again, we're going to our sub areas, Mr. Erickson. Okay, that my motion includes putting bicycle racks, 10 in each sub area, of which there are 5. And I will add to my motion, I'm just saying this, so this part isn't a question, that says close to the buildings as opposed to perimeters.
I'm aware.
He is aware.
Thank you.
Yeah, subjects aside, following up on Commissioner's questions, does that ever do an analysis in making its recommendation for the number and percentages of affordable units on where the break point is on a project for the BLU versus? Because I do that analysis in every project, and then, you know, staff's recommendation is usually far in excess of what I recommend, because if you're going to get any units on a site, it's going to be less, because the BLU is so much less than the cost.
Yes.
You guys do that analysis?
So I'll kick it to our housing rep in a second, but I'll speak from the zoning perspective. I think this is another way where we're kind of, it looks like we need to break the system a little bit or something, because for the zoning and land use analysis, we can't consider financing. You know, whether that's financing for affordable units or any other kind of source of financing, that's kind of beyond the scope of the zoning and land use analysis. However, I do acknowledge there are perhaps opportunities to in some way coordinate with housing, who is doing that financing, to at least have that information available. I'm like waiting for Daniel to check in if I say something, but to have that information available. But again, from the zoning perspective, I think at the very, I don't know, I think at the very most we could provide it as supplemental information for the commission to consider. But maybe Andre wants to jump in, but I don't think that could be whatever percentage we recommend. I don't think the basis of that can be a financial decision.
But we have a dollar amount on the fee in lieu. How'd we come up with it?
We don't, that's. from-
I know, but it's not ours, it doesn't play any.
And the mixed income housing development bonus program, it takes housing and it takes zoning and kind of, you know, puts them together. So I think the boundaries of like the legal parameters and everything are a little mushy, that's the legal term.
In a real world,
No,
knowing where the government's throughout, it's important if you actually want units on them.
Absolutely.
So not knowing where the break point is not helpful.
Yeah, and that's why I say I think the question is an important question. It also kind of breaks the system. But I'm not suggesting that the system doesn't need to be broken.
I know, we had this conversation.
It's very broken. Yeah.
We had this conversation a few years back. I don't think we can make a requirement that the applicants to share their performance with us. So it becomes because, and then we would not have experts to like look at those performers and kind of like certify that what they are saying is correct. So that's when housing comes in. So I don't know, like we talked about this a lot, like, because they will always say that it's a performer, but I don't know what that means. And I'm not an expert in financing development.
But you can do a ballpark.
Right. You
I would not be able to. I'm sorry.
common sense just on this one that is right here.
I
You
would
know,
assume housing can do a ballpark.
if you're going to lose 500,000 a year and it's going to cost you 2 million on the fee and lieu, then in 4 years I've paid it off. Whereas 15 years times 500,000, whatever that would be, I mean, that's a whole different ballgame. So I think you can basically get a ballpark. Common sense gives you something. I mean, there's some disconnect, as Commissioner Kingston's saying, between negotiating with applicants and the low ball of the fee in lieu. And I think you learn through practice. If it's not working and it's not getting these higher end to put in some affordable units where we need them most, then we've got to look at it again and raise the fee in lieu. I mean, I know our applicants don't want to hear that, but
I think that's why we came with the fee in lieu. Because it was, and I will add even more to the soup, so it's becoming a little crazier. They always have the option to build under the bonus, so there's absolutely no way for us to verify when can you guarantee that you need the bonus. Like the base is the one that dictates, but they can always build under the bonus and say, okay, I'm providing this. So it's a very long, arduous learned game between us and them, how we negotiate, like, and then where do you actually put the bonus? Is it on lot coverage or is it on units, or does it make sense to make sure that actually they need the bonus? So, and that's why we cannot have like a formula, because then it becomes mandatory and we don't want to do that.
Yeah, and then zoning as a concept anyway is not about specifying exactly what will be built, but more the parameters in which something will be built. So there's still flexibility within that. We don't want to be too prescriptive.
Okay. Commissioners, we have to move on. Moving on, we'll hold all the rest of the questions for the horseshoe. That's just case number 9. That's going to be held under advisement until September 7th. Number 10, has 10 been briefed before?
Yes.
It has. Are there any changes that we need to review? Ms. Munoz on number 10.
Yes, this one was an application that was renoticed and expanded. So that is the big change that has been done. Would you like it rebriefed, Commissioner Popkin?
I think we've had a pretty thorough briefing, and it doesn't seem like we've had many changes. I'm fine with not rebriefing this time.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions on case number 10? Any questions? No questions. We'll go to case number 11. Has 11 been briefed before? No? Okay, so we'll brief it today.
I'm sorry, I thought it had been briefed, but I am ready to brief it, so I can go ahead and do that.
Was it brief?
I can't remember honestly.
Leave it as brief, not because I knew I was gonna hold it.
Okay.
I don't remember this one. I don't remember what I was driving.
Yeah, we're brief.
Yes, we are going to brief number 11.
I am sharing my screen, just let me know if you can see it. Is it up?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this is an application to amend PD 336 for an R75A single-family district and personal care home for the aging use. It is on one lot that is 0.6271 acres, and it's located on the southwest corner of St. Rosalie Drive and Circlewood Drive. The applicant is seeking to amend the permitted land uses so that they can remove the age provision for the home for personal care and now accommodates children to house them as part of their facility of a group residential facility or handicap group residential unit. With the same floor area, no changes to the layout or structures. The only difference is that the residents are now of a younger age. Additionally, they would have up to 19 residents and 6 caretakers and shifts who are not living on site. This PD originated in 1990. It is one lot, which is not something that we typically prefer, but unfortunately, as a group residential facility, they are not allowed in single-family districts. This is a well-established single-family neighborhood. So at the time, their creative solution was to create a PD in order to allow the group residential facility in this neighborhood. So that was the purpose at the time, and they did go ahead and limit it to a home for the aging instead of it being a group residential in general, which is what they are now requesting. They are not adding language that specifies children, although that is the intent, and that's because we would like to avoid any future PD amendments if those who they serve did change for some reason, or if children who are aging out were to maintain their status staying there as part of the organization until they were properly prepared to be released. And according to DCAD records, the existing structure has been there since 1974. It's 2 stories and has about 6,700 square feet. This property is located in southeast Dallas, west of Kleberg. And here's an aerial map. It shows that developed nature of the property. And then additionally here you see, right here, this is the corner lot. So the St. Rosalie Drive frontage is along the north side of the property. And then on the east is the Circlewood Drive frontage. Very large lot, large house. And then here is the zoning map showing that PD area. And then the surrounding uses, we have undeveloped to the west, and then single family surrounding the site in all other directions. And now we are looking at the site west from Circlewood Drive. Here they do have a circle driveway there that is used to access the site. And we will turn the corner onto St. Rosalie where they also have a driveway, and then the fence is the property is fenced. Their rear yard, that is. Now this is adjacent. St. Rosalie dead ends into this area here that you see is undeveloped. And then these are the surrounding single family properties in the vicinity. Adjacent to the site, there is additional green space and then more single family uses to the south. This is the existing exhibit. It shows the structure, and it shows that there were existing trees. It has the same configuration of having this circle drive on Circlewood and then this driveway on St. Rosalie. Some of the trees aren't there any longer, but for the most part, they've been adequately maintained according to our arborist. They have proposed a new site plan to update it, or development plan, I should say. And it does show the parking being held here at the side along the St. Rosalie side driveway. But there are no changes to the floor area overall. This is just a comparison of that structure in the parking area. Staff recommendation is approval subject to that revised development plan and conditions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Munoz, questions, corrections? Any questions? No questions. Thank you, Ms. Munoz. We'll keep going. Case number 12, back to D6.
Okay. Can we see the presentation?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Fantastic. So this is an application for a specific use permit for a public school other than an open enrollment charter school on property that's zoned in R75A single family district. And it is on the southeast corner of North Montclair Avenue and Walmsley Avenue. The area of request is just over 5 acres, and the purpose of the request is to allow for an addition to an existing public school. This is the Jesus Morales Expressive Arts Vanguard. I would like to make some clarifications. The school building, they are not proposing any additional classrooms or band hall. This is a theater and music rooms, which are not considered classrooms. The existing building has about 54,000 square feet of floor area, and the addition proposed is about 22,000 square feet. There are 31 existing classrooms at the site, so there are no addition of classrooms, and they are currently serving elementary and middle school and would maintain that. 13 elementary schools, 18 middle school classrooms, that is. The school has an existing enrollment of 624 students, and it's expected to remain the same after the improvements have been completed. So this would be for a storm shelter, theater, and music rooms. The property is located in West Dallas, north of Fort Worth Avenue, and east of Sylvan Avenue, south of West Commerce Street. Here is the property and surrounding areas zoned in R75A with PD 714 to the south. That site is currently undeveloped, but it is in development for a multifamily complex, which there are some photos of. And then surrounding uses all in the R75A area. To the west is single family and undeveloped. To the north, we have single family church. And then to the east, additional single family uses. Here's an aerial map showing the developed nature of the site. And now I will go ahead with the site tour. Anything in red, you're looking at the actual site itself. So we're starting eastbound on Walmsley Avenue and continuing, looking at the westbound view. This is properties to the north on Walmsley, including single family. And this is directly across the indented parking at the front of the school, which is right here, the south side view from Walmsley Avenue, and a parking lot. This is the front area here on Walmsley, and then across the street where there's a church and additional single family uses down Walmsley. And then we continue on to the next portion of the site that fronts onto a right-of-way onto Flanders Street. We're looking at a playground area. And as we turn into the property here, there's a driveway right at the north intersection of North Windermere Avenue turning into Flanders. That's also where they have their dumpster. And across the street from that corner is single family uses, as you see eastbound on Flanders. And when you look northbound on Windermere to the east of the site, you see an additional driveway and then another playground, trees that were installed, and then surrounding single family uses. This portion of the property here fronts along the PD 714 property across the street that's being developed with multifamily right there. And now we are turning onto North Montclair, looking into the site where there are portables that will remain. east into the site and then south on Montclair. You see the existing condition of sidewalks, undeveloped property to the west, other small structures as noted on the site plan that will remain. And the adjacent single-family uses across the street on Montclair. As we turn back over to Walmsley. So the development standards comparison, this is an SUP, so it's not really modifying the development standards. However, we are just clarifying here the items that are provided, including that the plan shows 34.2% lot coverage and that there is no rear yard because it has 2 front yards, and therefore the other 2 remaining yards are considered side yards. As noted, the portable structures will remain in Montclair on the North Montclair Avenue frontage, and existing in the front yard, existing parking in the front yard on Walmsley at the northeast corner in that parking lot. A portion of it is considered to be in the front yard and non-compliant. They do plan to maintain that. And that's here, this parking here located in the front yard that is not typically permitted. They plan to maintain that condition, that existing condition. These structures here that are located in the side yard, they plan to maintain those portables there. And then additionally, this dumpster that is located here where the enclosure opens up into the side yard, they plan to maintain that condition. However, with these issues, whenever we get to permitting, there could be issues with them obtaining permits or being asked to relocate at the very least the dumpster. And at that point, staff is making the recommendation to consider making that change today rather than waiting to address the permitting issue later. So this is an enlarged view of the area that's seeing the addition being added. If you saw in the photos, there was a blue play court there right now. And so they would be building this there instead. So they'll have the 22,000 square foot addition with part of it being the storm shelter. And it has a maximum height of 40 feet, which is something that they have elected to add to the SUP conditions, and we'll go over in just a moment. I'd like to skip forward to those SUP conditions to note that they added that 40-foot height limitation. And then additionally, the parking here was added by staff for the case report. In my case report, I noted the code requirement for parking because it differs from elementary and middle schools. And in this case specifically, the plan shows 2 spaces. Here it shows 2 spaces for each classroom type, which is not the proper breakdown, although it is some sort of an average between the 2. Overall, staff would like to maintain the existing parking and not claim a less required parking ratio, and just state that the 65 existing spaces would be required to maintain those total 31 classrooms with the breakdown that they have today. So we would state that here, and that is what staff is recommending to be added to the SUP conditions. Now, the dumpster location should be addressed. If they choose not to address it, it is an existing condition that when they go to permitting, they will have to address at that time. Staff does recommend relocating the dumpster to allow maneuverability on site rather than any part being in the right of way. And additionally, the dumpster should have screening in a manner that actually prevents its visibility from being from the right of way and being visible to surrounding single-family uses. So overall, staff would like to see a clarification. Well, I'd like to add the clarification again that no added classrooms are being done as part of this renovation. And the SUP condition is being added for the height max of 40 feet. The clarification of the parking ratio as stated in the conditions in the docket should remain. And the plan should be updated to show that required parking amount and the relocation of the dumpster at the minimum. So we would state if that needs to be updated on the traffic management plan, then all 3, the site plan, traffic management plan, and conditions should be amended as briefed. Now, if you'd like to return to the TMP, this is showing us how they plan to queue largely on street. Again, this is a very urban school, not a lot of space. They are fitting in a rather large addition, and therefore they have found other practices which have been reviewed by our engineering division to determine that if they switch these to one-way operation for queuing, that it would be sufficient. They have the bus queue all along North Montclair, and then the parent queuing wrapping around from Walmsley down Montclair and south, all the way around to the Windermere side. Are there any questions regarding the conditions, changes, or the TMP at this time?
Any questions, commissioners? Not at this time, is what else?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioners, cases 13 and 14 will be held under advisement. Commissioner, do you have a date on that?
I think the first,
September?
September.
That would be September 7th. September 7th. And case number 15 will also be held under advisement to date undetermined at the moment. We'll have a date of board sheet. Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, it is then 11:32 a.m. and that concludes the briefing of the Dow City Planning Commission. Commission, see a couple. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much.
Oh, must be in your district. I should.
Oh, there is one there.
Where is it? Oh, here it is, 22. 22, okay.
22. That's the question.
Where's Jason? Is he
Is Mr. Poole online?
Yes, he's coming. We definitely didn't expect to be done with briefing this quickly, so I let him know
Yes.
he's on the way.
It's not. It's the. Yes.
Okay. Oh, excellent.
Good morning, Mr. Poole.
He's not, is Jason? No, there is. Where's he? Did they ask for him?
We're at the space.
Oh.
Can't hear you, Jay.
Yeah.
Mr. Poole, we can't hear you. Okay. Oh, he's coming. Gotcha.
How about that? Is that better?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, can I have just a minute or two to get the presentation pulled up? I'm so
Of course.
sorry.
Please take your time. My son's just trying to. Maybe, yeah.
You want to buy him off?
Yes. I won't lie.
That's what you
you
look at this.
Time. Oh,
I tested my husband.
no idea. It's bad.
You are right.
Massive.
Did I tell you that my son Adam, right? He's all over YouTube right now, so he knows soccer, whatever. And then YouTube is inspired who is cooler, like Team Messi or Team Ronaldo.
Yes.
Team Ronaldo, I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you're out of the house if you're Team Ronaldo.
What?
We are never Team Ronaldo. Get out.
Back to Romania. Yeah. So my oldest son was Ronaldo.
It's always a
They
fight
both
everywhere.
play like them too.
Oh, really?
All the sons.
They dirty?
Very fast, very, little ones.
Okay, my apologies and thank you so much for waiting for me.
He's Haji, so just irritating people. You are.
The presentation is up, Mr. Paul, we can see it.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, thank you.
All right, Jason Poole, Development Services Administrator for Development Services. This is the certificate of appropriateness for signs. There is one CA. It's application number 23052300002. It's at 2550 Pacific Avenue in the downtown Special Provision Sign District. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness by Josephine Gonzalez of Chandler Signs Inc. for a 230.6 square foot illuminated attached sign at 2550 Pacific Avenue. The sign's located on the northwest elevation. The zoning is CA2. The proposed sign is a set of LED illuminated channel letters mounted on a 2-inch metal frame against the facade facing Pacific Street, bearing the name Westdale and a logo. The application meets all applicable code for the downtown Special Provision Sign District. Here's the purpose statement for the downtown Special Provision Sign District, to regulate and enhance, or to regulate signs to enhance, preserve, and develop the unique character of the downtown while addressing the diversity of business and promoting its economy. Include aesthetic considerations to ensure signs are appropriate to the architecture of the district, do not obscure its significant features, and lend themselves to the developing retail and residential uses and the pedestrian character of the area. And finally, inspired by the need to maximize effective orientation toward of signs toward the high level of walking public. So the subject site is located 3/4 of a mile northeast of City Hall, north of I-30 and east of I-45. Here is a location map showing the SBSDs and its location in relation to the SBSDs is in the downtown perimeter. This is the aerial and zoning maps. Here's the location map provided by the applicant. It's proposed to be on the northwest facade facing Pacific. And here is a location elevation photo. The sign occupies less than 1% of this facade. The facade does have multiple signs on it, and when taken all into account, all of those signs make up less than 2% of the facade area. You can see I indicated the parking sign there that was approved recently. And currently there's a sign on the lower portion of the building that will be replaced. So this sign is being replaced. It's not being relocated, but that sign will be removed and the new sign installed at the top of the building. Here's a further elevation detail. It gives a little more dimension on the actual alignment on the building. We've got the top of the sign from grade and the bottom of the sign measured from grade. Here are the sign details. This sign is the exact same size as the other sign. All specs remain the same. It'll backlight with white LED. And again, it's 230.6 square feet. Here are the attachment details. These are a frame on the back side of the sign that mounts with clips to the existing window mullion. Here is photos of the subject site. This is the north facade where this sign will be mounted. You can see that park sign. This is looking northeast and southwest on Pacific, and southeast and northwest on Good Latimer. Here are some of the signs around the district. This is just follows business zoning rules. So we've got kind of a mix of all kinds of signs. Both staff and SSDAC recommend approval.
Thank you very much, Mr. Poole.
Questions?
Commissioner Hemp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Poole, would you confirm that the mounting height for the sign is going to be closer to 333 feet. I think in our CAPE report, it had noted 249, I believe was the number. But it is actually going to be mounted at the top of the building, which shows that the top of that mullion is 334 feet. Is that correct?
And I believe that's actually above sea level, because I think we have it at 100 feet, so it's actually
No.
233
Dallas
and
is
226.
Yeah.
Let me zoom into this map a little bit.
Do you know that? Again, just wanted a clarification. We had a dimension in the case report that said 249, and that just didn't seem to match the drawing.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Yeah, you've actually got it right there, overall height, top 333.
Yes, it has a base elevation on this particular plan at 100 feet.
And if you could stay on this sheet for one moment, the other question, I think we had a rendered view that showed the sign closer to the edge of the building, but this 5 feet that you're showing in this diagram, that was confirmed
Yes.
by the applicant. Is that correct, that it is actually
Yes.
in?
Yes, that is the intent. And
Thank you.
it's not to cover that last window there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Young, please.
So the height figures are above grade, is that right?
That's what I'm confirming.
Okay. Well, we can revisit that at the hearing if we need to. Just, would it surprise you to know that the height above sea level in Dallas ranges from 450-ish to 550-ish?
Yeah, that's my mistake. I was going with the base number on this map as sea
All right.
level. That was a bad assumption. My fault.
Okay, thank you.
You. Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, so now we're wrapping it up. It is 10:43, and that concludes the briefing of the LCA appointment. 11:43. Thank you. Enjoy your lunch. We'll see you at 12:30. Drive safely, Commissioner Carlin.
But you're gonna have to show them to us.
Yeah, I need a picture. I was gonna ask you yesterday.